Today, we're checking out a new feature that's recently been added in to Metabox. This is the block editor feature. This allows you to use the Gutenberg editor inside your custom post types, inside your custom meta fields, and so on. This opens up a ton of possibilities, but there are some limitations and some quirks that I would like to see ironed out before I think this is a truly usable feature. But let me show you how to use it, and then I'll give you my feedback at the end of the video. But as always, I welcome your comments and questions. Drop those in the comment section down below. If you've used it, if you've tried it, or once you watch this video, get any feedback, drop them in the comment section. Anyway, let's take a look. So I've got a test copy of WordPress set up, I've got Metabox installed, and I've already created a custom post type called businesses. So if we jump into Metabox and we come into the custom fields, you'll see I've added some additional business fields inside here. These are just standard fields that we can use in Metabox, text fields, number fields, and so on. So let's go and add in that new editor or the block editor field. Let's take a look at how it works. So make sure that you have the latest version of Metabox and all the plugins are up to date, not using any beta versions or anything. This is the final full release. Link and details down below for you. Okay, so once you've done that, you can see I've already got a couple of fields inside here. So let's go and add a new field in. So we'll add a field, and from there, we're going to choose the advanced, and we've got the block editor. Let's enable this, and you can now see that familiar kind of look inside the editor itself. Let's rename this. We'll call it additional content. And if we take a quick look down the left-hand side, you'll see most of the options here are pretty standard. The block editor types, you can see we can choose what kind of field type it is, the name of it, the ID, which does need to be unique, any allowed blocks. Now, this is one of the first things that I think really could do with a little bit of fleshing out. If we expand this, you can see all of the different blocks that you have available inside the block editor are listed here. And as you can see, there's an awful lot of them. So if you want to allow only specific ones, you literally have to come in here and choose the ones you want. So for example, query loop, come back in, scroll through, find query something else or page list or whatever it is. And you could see how this could very quickly become very, very time consuming, especially if you've got multiple ones here. What I would much rather see is the ability to create a kind of template for allowed blocks that you can save inside Metabox itself, and then we can call those kind of templates up inside the block editor. Otherwise, this kind of makes the allowed blocks kind of a little bit sort of too much to deal with if you've got a lot of these fields being added in to an overall setup inside your site. So I'd like to see some way of templatizing that, or at least setting up kind of pre-designed, pre-configured sets of allowed blocks that we could then reference inside here. Jump down, we've got our tooltips, we've got the number of columns we want this to occupy, and so on. We don't currently have an option to choose or how high we actually want this editor to be. I'm sure we can do it through CSS, but I would much rather again see that inside the editor itself. Otherwise, you'll see that when we take a look at this, there's some certain inherent problems with the way this is actually set up. Again, this could be something that I'm doing wrong, so if I am, please do let me know in the comment section down below. While I know Metabox relatively well, it's not my first choice, so I could easily be missing out things here. Then you've got all your normal things like conditional logic validation, when you want to add this to admin columns, etc., etc. You can also come into the advanced and you can choose whether you want to store these things inside their own separate table. So all the normal options are here. So let's say we've got everything set up. We'll hit save changes. This is already associated with my custom post type. It could be associated with a normal post, anything you kind of want. So now if we come over into our businesses, open up one of our businesses, and you can see there is now our additional content section. Now you'll see that we've got pretty much nothing here because, well, I've chosen a couple of options that I only want to be allowed. So if we click the plus, you can see we can choose a query loop and the post list. So you can see how we can restrict and limit things. Let's remove those limitations a second. We simply do that by coming back into our custom fields and removing these options. So clear all that and resave this. We'll jump back over. Okay, so coming back in now, you'll see we get more options available here. If we click the plus, you can see we've got all of the available options inside here for all of the different elements that we have inside the normal Gutenberg editor. So that's pretty cool. Now, this does lead me on to a couple of things that I want to talk about with regards to this and some of the limitations that I see right now that I think really need to be addressed to make this truly usable. First of all, you see the editor, like I mentioned just now, we have no way of being able to resize this inside here because we kind of like have no option here. we're kind of stuck. So we kind of open these options up. You can see we've got to scroll through. We don't really see an awful lot. If we choose something, for example, this quote, you can see it adds it in there, and it does start to expand a little bit, but it doesn't make it the easiest way to work. I would much rather the ability to be able to expand this out as I want. Also, you'll notice we get 3 dots over in the corner that don't actually do anything. They open this tiny little box up. But again, you really need to have the ability here to be able to open this up as a full screen so we can work in this without the distractions and limitations of all the other things going on in the screen. Obviously, if we come back up to the normal editor section, you'll see we have a lot more available space here. Plus, we have the ability to open this up, check out our list view, and we can check inside there our outlines so we can see what's going on. We can control everything. So we get a much more feature-rich as you get inside Gutenberg, I suppose, set of options. And obviously, we can open this up to full screen, get rid of all the distractions. However, down below, using the Metabox way, it kind of feels very cramped and a little bit awkward to work with. The other thing as well is once it starts to get a little bit more complex, so let's remove this, and let's say we want to add in something like some columns, something you probably want to do. We'll add some columns in, and we'll say, let's go for 50-50. So you'll see, because we can't open this up in list view, when we start adding things in, like images, so you see it kind of gets a little bit awkward to see what's going on. So let's just say we'll add a heading inside here, set that just to be H1 so we can see some difference. Click underneath, add some text in. But what you can see is it starts to get just a little bit awkward to work with. Because we don't have all the options for like list view and things like that, we can't really see what's going on that well. We can adjust things inside here, but we're kind of limited in what we can do because you can see we select headings and so on. We only get these options above. We no longer get any of the options like we'd have done the right-hand side for formatting and all those kinds of useful things. Again, unless I'm missing something out here. So while this is quite useful, and I see the future, as these things get ironed out, it will become a lot more useful. I think right now, it kind of feels a little bit constricted by the limitations we have placed upon us, with this being a kind of window inside the overall kind of setup, as opposed to being a kind of native function like we have inside the normal WordPress editor itself. So you can see if we sort of select text here, for example, we get a little pop-up, which is reminiscent of what we see here, but we also get options then for the text color, background, typography, dimensions, and so on. All the normal options. We don't have any of that clearly available to us inside here. So if we choose the heading, for example, I can do some basic things here, like highlights and so on. I can click here and I can duplicate and group and so on, but I don't have those same kinds of options. Same if I go for the text, I kind of limited to what I can do inside here. So to round things up, right now, I think this is a good starting point. I do think its usability really needs to be addressed considerably before it's something that can easily replace what you could do with the WYSIWYG editor. Again, going back to what I said a little earlier about where you can choose what options you want available inside the block editor, we need to have some way of making that much quicker with the just sheer number of options that are available inside there. And I'm sure we can filter those down with a normal way. We can sort of restrict access to things inside the normal WordPress editor itself. I'm sure that will reflect inside here, but it still means we have to then manually go in and check all the things that we want. Some kind of templates that will be available or blueprints for those will be really useful. And I think we need to have the ability to full screen and control the size of the editor when we add in the block editor using Metabox. But like I say, a good start, but still has a way to go. And as always, I welcome your thoughts and feedback. Drop those in the comment section down below. Are you using this? Would you use this? Or do you still see those limitations I've talked about? Or any other ones that I may have missed out on? Drop a comment down below. As always, all applicable links are in the description. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts. And until next time, take care.